Diablo 4 Season 6 Vessel of Hatred has completely changed the endgame and changed how we farm lots of the endgame gear and upgrade materials. So if you're looking to get completely decked out in mythic uniques, 4-star greater affix gear, you want thousands and thousands of Obducite to upgrade it all, I want to cover the best and fastest ways to farm everything. So let's break down the best way to farm everything, and I'm going to start with Obducite. This is the main material for upgrading gear, and if you're looking to get perfect rolls on an item, you're going to be going through a lot of this. So let's talk about the fastest way to get this and get it in bulk. Now, the easiest and most rewarding way that I found is Infernal Hordes, especially on Torment 4. You get more Obducite depending on your Torment level, so being on Torment 4 will get you the most. And you go in, you clear all of the waves, and then open the Masterworking chest at the end. You can easily get between 2,000 and 4,000 Obducite per 10 wave Infernal Horde. The only thing slowing you down is how fast you can clear everything on your build and the choices that you're given, the options for what spawns in each of these waves. You can have like good options and bad options, and it can range quite unlucky to very lucky depending on what you're given. So some tips to get the most here is to funnel into one thing. So when you get your choices, you can empower this or you can get more of this, is to focus on one thing and go really far into it. I find Hellborn to be by far the best. So just keep taking the Hellborn options and you'll have like 4 or 5 Hellborn spawning at once. Or you keep taking the Fiends and then or the Lords and you get more and more of those spawning and you just go all in on there. You can really clean up. I get like over 1,000 Cinders on my Sorcerer for a really good run. And on my Spiritborn, even higher because they're just busted broken right now. But yeah, if you can do really well here, you can easily come away with like 5,000 Obducite in one good run. Another tip here is to group up. There is zero downside to grouping up with other people. So if you can join with friends or you can just join randoms in the party finder, you all get max rewards at the end. So yeah, I definitely recommend trying to do that if you're, say, playing one of the weaker classes or your build's not quite finished and you want to farm. Definitely try and find some people to play with. But yeah, that's probably the best way to get Obducite. Another good way is Nightmare Dungeons. If your build is not so great at speed farming, you can get a good chunk of Obducite from doing Nightmare Dungeons. They drop constantly from the mobs. You can see here, just zerging through a Nightmare Dungeon, and we're getting hundreds and hundreds of Obducite. Okay, now let's talk about materials, like the boss summoning materials, Malignant Heart, Steel, that kind of stuff. If you want to properly farm items in this game, like uniques and mythic uniques, you need a ton of these boss summoning materials, and there are some very fast ways to get stacks of these. Okay, number one, the best way to get them is from the new event, the Undercity. In the Undercity, you can use a tribute, and the tribute you want is called Tribute of the Titans. You use this, you run the event, and at the end, you open the box, and it is just filled with boss materials. It takes around 5 minutes to do these-ish, and you get just a massive amount of all the different bosses' materials. And it's not just like the Steel and the Fear for the minor bosses. You can get stuff for the main bosses, Duriel and Duriel. So this is the number one way to grind out boss materials. You get these from defeating the bosses themselves. So as soon as you start fighting these bosses, you'll get into like a loop where you beat the boss, you get a tribute, you go and farm the Undercity, and then you get more materials to resummon the boss. So as soon as you beat the bosses a few times, you'll have loads of these, and you'll have more than you need because every time you use a few, you'll get so many materials that you'll go and fight the boss and get even more. So yeah, that's the number one way to summon these bosses. Another good way to get them is surprisingly from Helltides. The best way I've found to do this is to use the Seething Opal of Torment that you get from the Realm Walker. I think it's the purple one. This gives you additional boss materials that drop from monsters you defeat. So if you just go around a Helltide and just destroy all the mobs, just everything you see, you'll get these big drops of boss materials randomly. Like you just kill a random little ghoul and you'll get like 6 fear, which is huge. On top of this, you can get the blood from the Maiden, you can get hearts from the debtors that spawn around here, you can get steel from the chests. This is a great way to farm boss materials if you don't have any of the tributes of the Titans for the Undercity. So if you're just hitting endgame, you're new to Season 6, this is a good place to start. Lastly is one I only started doing recently, and it's surprisingly really good, and that's buying the boss material boxes from the Den. So this is the new place in Vessel of Hatred. If you go here and to the person in the middle, you can buy these with barter tokens. So these are tokens you get for playing with your mercenaries. And if you just go here and refresh the shop, every day you can go here and see the shop for free, and you can do 1 refresh a day, but you can also refresh it for 100 tokens. You'll start seeing these boss material caches, and they have really good chunks of materials in. I went here with a few thousand that I'd saved up and just bought a bunch, and they really do add up. So if you've got nothing else to use these on, it's a good thing to get. So yeah, they're the best ways I've found to get these boss materials. Now let's talk about the juice. Let's talk about uniques and mythic uniques. Target farming them, like go in and getting the ones you want when you want them. Everyone is chasing these juiced out uniques with like 3 or 4 greater affixes on, because they're like build defining. They're what take you really far at endgame. And the best way to get these is from these main bosses. In this expansion and in this season, every boss drops a specific set of items. So if you're playing a Spiritborn and you want the Ring of the Midnight Sun, which is a very popular ring, you need to farm Grigor. Say you're playing a Sorcerer and you want the Fractured Winterglass to play the Frost Orb build, that's from Lord Zia. So you can see what you need and you can target it. There's a guide, there's loads of them, there's loads of guides. There's one on Wowhead that I use, and it lists each boss and it shows what each boss drops. I'll link that down below if you want to go check out, your own character. And then all you have to do is you go there, you spawn the boss that has the item you need, and you just beat it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually you'll get a greater affix, you'll get a double greater affix, you'll get a triple, like a 3-star, and you just keep looting the uniques and just hope that eventually you get a really good drop. And while fighting all of these bosses, if you're completely new to endgame Diablo, there's like normal, there's like, I don't know how to say it, but like minor bosses and then like meta bosses, like greater bosses. So as you're farming everything but Duriel and Anaduriel, you will find these additional materials: Shards of Agony, Mucus Slick Eggs, Pincushion Doll, and Sand Scorched Shackles. And these 4 items are used to summon the 2 greater bosses, Duriel and Anduriel. And these bosses have a greater chance to drop mythic uniques. So if you want the mythics, that's where you want to be aiming most of your time. The best tip I have for farming bosses, again, and if you just want to be a solo player, you're going to be sick of hearing this, but the best way to farm bosses is to group up in the party finder. You don't need to be social, you don't need to be chatty, but just group in the party finder and do what we call a rotation. Only one person has to use their materials, and everyone in the party gets a drop. Everyone in the party gets the normal loot you would get if you went in solo. So if you have, say, 4 Malignant Hearts and you join a group, everyone takes a turn putting in their materials, and then you get 4 chances, you get 4 sets of loot for 1 hand-in of materials. So yeah, that's something I always do. Now, the last thing you're going to be looking for at endgame is non-unique gear, so ancestral eye level 800 items with good greater affixes on. Additionally, you'll be looking for good affix rolls that you can salvage into the Codex of Aspects. So let's go over the best way to get all of that stuff. And I think, personally, the #1 way is the pit. The pit can be cleared super fast if you've got a good build. You can do a whole run in a couple of minutes, and they will reward you with a handful of items, like 6, 7 items, some of which might be ancestral. So you can do this on repeat and just go, just keep going and just fill an inventory, and you'll have a few ancestrals, 800 item level items. On top of this though, every time you open the chest at the end of the pit, you get a good amount of obols, and the higher pit level you do, the more of these you get. So if you're doing like 100, you get over 200 obols a run in just a couple of minutes. So this is massive. And then you spend these at the curiosity vendor in town for a more of a chance at this ancestral gear. I've been lucky enough to pull some good affix rolls here, and I've pulled some items with like double greater affixes here. So don't sleep on these obols at the obol vendor, the curiosities. I think the pit combined with the obols that you get from it is the #1 way to farm gear. Personally, that's where I've had the most luck. The second way I would suggest is Infernal Hordes. Again, if you blast through these and then you open the 200 chest at the end, this will always, I believe, have a couple of greater affix items in, a couple of ancestral items in. You can only open one of these chests a run. So even if you have like 1,000 cinders, you can only open one chest. So if you want to speedrun this just for gear, do the 6-wave compasses, the 6-wave Infernal Hordes, and then just get like 200, open the chest at the end. That's a good way to just make sure you're making the most. If you don't care about the Obducite, that's a good thing to do. And then again, if you have the Undercity as well, if you can find this thing called the Tribute of Radiance, this is the legendary version of the tributes. This drops, I believe, from Whisper Caches. That's the only place I've ever seen this, from the Whisper Caches. This gives you a ton of ancestral gear when you finish it. And these have, great affixes on. I've not had much luck finding these tributes outside of Whisper Caches. So if you know of any other ways, do let me and other people know down below, because these are phenomenal. On top of this, you can target specific items in the Undercity. So you can say, I want items with skill rolls on. So you could try and find like gloves with quill volley on, or you could try and find like a neck with plus passive on. So this is really good for targeting those hard to find items. So yeah, this is really good. Also, these are not groupable, so don't try and like go in your friends to get gear. These are solo, they're locked to the person who puts it in. You can go in with a friend and help them, if they're struggling, but you won't get any rewards. So yeah, this is a really good way. Don't mess these up. Make sure if you've got one, save it for Torment 4 and make sure you can do it, or go in with someone who can. Yeah, these are great. There's also Hell Tides for gear, but you can target specific chests here. Like you can just go in, defeat the mobs and open the helmet chest and get good helmets. But even on Torment 4, I find these have really low chances at Ancestrals. I don't know why. Maybe I just got bad luck. But this is another way to farm if you like Hell Tides. But that's pretty much everything endgame, really. I can't think of anything else. Everything else that is in the game should come naturally. You know, if you're doing the pit, you'll get glyphs. If you're doing Hell Tides, you'll get materials. If you're salvaging gear, you'll get rawhide and iron and all that stuff. So yeah, that should be everything covered. A good gameplay loop I found is farm the tributes of the Titans, get loads of boss materials, farm the bosses in rotations to get uniques and mythics, and then go do your pits to level your glyphs, find some ancestral gear, and then spend your oobles to find more ancestral gear. Combine that with a couple of big 10-wave infernal hordes, and you will be set for endgame. I hope this has helped. If you're looking, if you're new to Diablo or looking how to gear your character, or you're feeling a bit lost with all the different activities, hopefully this has helped in some way. If there's anything I've missed, or if you think there are better ways to farm certain things that I've not covered, do let me and other people know in the comments. And if you have found this helpful, if this has helped, I make a ton of guides and builds for Diablo 4, including lots of like starter leveling builds each season. So if you are interested in that kind of thing and want to subscribe, that would be awesome. But that's it from me. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.